Hello everyone. Today we are discussing another Scrum real life challenges, issues, topics with one of the professional, not necessarily directly linked to interviews, but yeah, these questions can come up in interviews also. But the original trigger of the discussion is not an interview. It is how do I deal a particular situation. So that's the trigger, and probably we get some ideas. Okay, so you may wanna give a little brief and then get started, yeah, with your questions.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Saket. First of all, thank you so much for having this discussion with me. Yes. I'm working as a Scrum Master currently with a project. We're having around 13 members, so there are two teams. Okay. So the scenarios that I have today are also related to the one which I have been asked in few of the interview questions as well.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some scenarios which I am facing in my current project as well. So I think I need a better solution on these scenarios from you. So firstly, I want to go with this point that when we have a client-based project where uh, we don't have a product owner from our team. The product owner is someone from the client side, and from our team we just have a scrum master and a BA who is collecting all the requirements. Okay, so here what is happening is, although there is a PO from the other side, from the client side, but the PO is not even interacting with us. Whenever we need his help, it is like I have to push him to give me all the stories for sprint n plus 1 and sprint n. So having the backlog refinement meetings and all, he's not proactive in those things. So what exactly should be my approach as a scrum master here to bring him into the active mode?
Okay, so what I can see here, and based on what I have been observing and talking to many people, this
Mhm.
is a typical challenge which we face in a service-oriented Scrum implementation, where you have a client, and the client may have their own priorities, their own issues, and they may not be able to give a time to a development team. And the development team, since they are following Scrum, they expect many things from the product owner, which seems to be not
Mhm.
catering to. Now,
Mhm.
uh, as you said that you have someone who can do a business analysis in the team, that's a good situation. So what I am seeing
Mhm.
here is that a lot of elaboration related to a requirement, you can say elicitation of a requirement, is primarily
Mhm.
done by the development team, not by the product owner in those cases. So it may happen that you may get a one-liner user story, just the front part of the user story, but the acceptance criteria may need to be discovered in collaboration with the business analysis, and maybe you start interacting with some of the stakeholders who might be able to give you the acceptance criteria over a period of time. So it's like
Okay.
that you reduce the work of product owner, and you make him that clear that you don't have to do all the things. You can do just prioritization related stuff, because the priorities you don't know. Priorities is a business decision, and which feature to bring in, which user story to bring in, and which user story should not be brought in. That is something a very important decision, and that part of decision should be with that product owner. As, and you find a way to communicate that, have some kind of a discussion, or I would say working agreement. So one
Okay.
has, and many times when we talk about agile scrum, we usually talk about working agreement, and many of those agreements are internally oriented, like I talk to the
Okay.
team and how do I handle it and all. Now here, even if the product owner is expected to be a scrum internal team member, scrum team member, but in reality
Mhm.
it might not be the case when you have a client vendor relationship. Then he
Yeah.
is internal as well as an external. So you might need to
Mm.
have an explicit working agreement with him, that, or you can call it, there has to be an external working agreement where we have a clarity what we can expect from the product owner, and what the team is expected to do, get ready in order to achieve that.
Mhm. Okay. Okay.
And
So working agreement. Yeah.
yeah, working agreement is an important thing. Coming
Mhm.
up with a helping part of it, and finding out what element of the requirement work can be done by the development team is also a good idea. Yeah, so this is
Okay.
something can be done. Now, another thing we can explore here is, as a scrum master, yeah, how
Mm-hmm.
can I help the product owner to give me more time, or explain these things to us in an easy manner, rather than we are asking so many information? Can we just ask few information and think rest of the requirement ourselves? Now, many time,
Correct.
I'm not sure it is in your case or not, but many time I have seen the team and Scrum Master, they lack the understanding of what the product and user stories and all those things are all about. And as
Mm-hmm.
they start building their domain skill, as they start building their requirement orientation skills, as they start building the skill which can help the product owner communicate easily. So a team and Scrum Master start speaking the language of product owner, that can also many time can improve the collaboration. So it's like you
Mm-hmm.
also showing your effort that yes, we will learn this part of it. Because if you
Okay.
just remain in your boundaries, then also the product owner may remain little away. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Okay. I will try to work on this situation then, the way you have said.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Mm.
So, I mean, the problem here was I completely agree with you, but the problem here was when we are from the service side, right? There is a boundary beyond which we cannot, convince the client side.
Yeah,
So there
yeah,
is a boundary beyond which we cannot talk to them, and we cannot convey everything to them. So for that reason, I wanted to just have this understanding from you that what should be the exact approach to go ahead and talk to them.
yeah, yeah. And you can have a simple objective that okay, we understand there is a boundary, we understand you have your own priorities, and you might also appreciate the team also has to do something, they also have a work to finish. Now let's figure out,
Correct.
let's come up with a working agreement. So let's,
Mm-hmm.
and that may become just as a I think objective of having nice conversation, and then we can find out how do we manage our priorities with each other. Yes,
Okay.
and the work
Okay.
timings with each other. Yes.
Okay. Sure. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was great. Okay, so one thing is, so in the same sense, when so the other my question goes ahead like this, that when we do have a client team, so when it comes to grooming of the stories, whatever we are going to pick up in the next sprint, so we are in currently nth sprint, and we by the end of the sprint we will start grooming the n+1 sprint work items, right? So in this grooming, generally, what is happening is I am facilitating this grooming continuously every day on the second half of the sprint, and making sure the complete team and whoever the team leads and the architect from the client side are available. Is that the right approach, or this should be enhanced?
Yeah. So the whole idea here is what is the problem you are facing which you are not addressed by the current approach. And if you have some, then you need to modify your approach. If the current
Mm-hmm.
approach is providing you sufficient input, sufficient direction, then it's a working approach for you. So I believe rather than focusing on right and wrong, we focus, does it, is it working or is it not working? If it is working, it's
Yeah.
good. If it's not working, then something is needed.
Yeah, so this approach is actually not very properly working. What is happening
Hmm.
is the grooming. Although even if I start it in the after the mid sprint, but again the grooming still goes on till the next sprint. So yes, we now we have started the current sprint, but still the grooming is going on. Still on the day one, the estimations are not completed because the grooming is not done. Team is not aware of the complete high level architecture or design that they are going to take up. So this is the problem which is happening here.
Okay, and what happens in the absence of the understanding of high level architecture or high level requirement? What happens in that case?
In that case, the stories which we are which we have planned for this sprint are not estimated. In that sense, we are not utilizing the full capacity of the team. So we know
Hmm.
that the team the team's full capacity is added. We know that they will be able to deliver around 40 points, but only 10 to 20 points have been added. Rest of the points have not been added. The capacity is not being fully used here. That's what
Okay,
I'm feeling. Yeah.
okay. So in this whole mismanagement, the overall delivery which happens at the end of a sprint is less
Mhm.
than what it could be. So that's what we
Exactly.
are saying. Now we need to find out who is worried about it, like in the
Mhm.
retrospective or when, who get impacted primarily. So see, in a long term, team will also get impacted because somebody will come up and say, you guys are not producing anything.
Yeah.
Now we need to understand, if this pattern continues, who are the stakeholder who might feel this needs to be improved. Now, why I'm
Mm-hmm.
asking that? Because they are the one who can help you in fixing this problem. So say if
Okay.
there could be a one thing, people may say, we are in the initial stage of development and it's okay we remain little chaotic. Over a period of time, the clarity will emerge, because say over a period of time, after doing 20, 30, 40 user story, the team will also understand how to do it. Then we don't have to tell that much to the team. So that could
Mm-hmm.
be a one approach. I'm not sure that's the case, but it could be a one approach. Then we are saying that, okay, how can we learn that part? How can we reduce dependency on client teams telling us this is how to do, this is not to do? So as a scrum master, many times as a service scrum master, they have their internal you can call them stories or work items, which they plan in a
Mm-hmm.
sprint primarily to build a capability. So you may say that, okay, from a confusion which we are getting from a requirement point of view,
Mm-hmm.
we are only getting say 30, 40% of our capacity work, but remaining 50,
Mm-hmm.
60% we are applying to understand the client architecture, client requirement in such a way so that going forward, we are less dependent on their guidance and we can take care of that. So that could be a one approach a Scrum Master can take, and you can make it explicit also. You can have a clear understanding with your client stakeholders that this is how it is happening and we have this much time. We are adding our learning stories. You make those learning stories visible, have some goals attached to it, and you can also make it clear that whenever you have more clarity, we can remove these learning stories because it looks like we have a clear identifiable work item to work on. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. Okay.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
proactively
I'll try
working.
to
Yeah.
answer. Yeah, yeah. I'll try to analyze in that sense whatever you have mentioned here. I think my analysis and observation takes a lot of effort here. So I'll do that, Saket. I
Mhm.
think that is something I should do. Okay. And yeah. Okay, so the next story, I mean, the next question that I want to go ahead is, I am so much, with adding story on the board that I am talking about stories all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next part is, yeah, so with respect to the same thing that I asked you in the second question, the problem is, as we are not doing the grooming properly, right? So what happens is, in the starting, see, what my approach always is, let's fill the board in the first day one. Let's, whenever we do the sprint planning, so there can be a bandwidth of one or two story points still left, but at least, I mean, we will have that buffer, that is not a problem. But at least 80% of the board we should fill it up with all the tasks that are already assigned to us, in that sense. But what happened is, as I told you, the grooming is not being done properly, so it is getting continued till the current sprint. So what is happening is, in that sense, the I mean, it is not 80%, it is just 40%, which is the tasks are added on the board. So what happens is, in the end, we see that the velocity is very less, because what happens is, team, although they planned for 40%, but they are extending it to 50 to 60%. Okay, and ultimately, full capacity is not being utilized here. So I want to avoid this situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a very fair point, and maybe as a Scrum Master, you need to first also have a selling of this idea internally to your team also, because it is not like that, why to worry, the client is giving this much work only, because in long term we will have to worry, because at a later point in time it might not be a good for a vendor not to produce things, because the client may think this team is not producing anything. So we need to be worried about not producing anything. That's the important thing. Now, the second thing is, see, it is okay to start with 40%, but it
Mhm.
has to elaborate during the time. So we can have that working agreement also, that we understand maybe the client does not have a particular visibility in the beginning. You may introduce another mid sprint grooming or mid sprint analysis kind of an event, if that makes sense, based on the retrospective and discussion you have with those people, again a working agreement. So the idea here is I go back to the point one only. In especially in a vendor customer relationship, the way you have an internal working agreement, you also need to have an external working agreement. And if the external working agreement required their architect, their technology people, their requirement people, we need to be clear that at what frequency we come together and we elaborate what has to be done. So it might
Correct.
happens that they may say, we usually don't know what we have to do, and we can only tell you during sprint. Okay, we may have that agreement that we say, okay, during the sprint also we are taking a risk, but
Mm-hmm.
we are picking up some user stories without some clarity, and we move forward with it. The another important point,
Mm-hmm.
I will go back to the second point only, and especially in a vendor client relationship. As a vendor, as a scrum master, you may also want to have a conversation with your team about how to avoid this situation, what is in our control to avoid it. Because see, there is always an external party, they have their own restriction, they have their own challenges which you will handle through external working agreement. But as a scrum master, you need to also challenge your development team that what can we do about it. What stops us from visualizing a user story which might be useful for the end client.
I will have this, understanding with team. You said, one thing that you said very well was this: there needs to be an understanding between the team to hold it, very nicely. Exactly how are they going to manage such, miscapacity situations? So understood that. I will, strengthen these bonds with the team first.
Yeah. And what I'm observing nowadays, especially as an observation, and I was talking to one of the person 2 days ago, a lot of because of such situation, the understanding of user story, product management skills are nowadays asked in Scrum Master also. So in the recent time when the vendor is looking for a Scrum Master, they technically look for variety of skills. So it goes beyond
Correct.
facilitation. It goes to the internal external relationship management, and
Correct.
understanding what is the user story, why it is there, why it is not there, will be also the one of the role many organization nowadays expecting from the Scrum Master. So you may also take this as an opportunity and try to build your skill in that
Mm-hmm.
area of product management and product thing. Okay, how can I support product owner, how can I support backlog refinement, what can I learn so that I can take the things forward. And the same challenge we give to the team, what can you guys learn from technology perspective, what you can learn about the product, so that we are less and less dependent, and we propose that this is how we are doing. Let us know if there is something needs to be modified. Rather than we look for solution, we reach to a stage we start proposing solution. Yeah, and maybe going forward we start just implementing solution without taking approval if we have a confidence about it, but initially we start proposing with the solution.
Okay. Okay. We'll do that. Okay, so there is one major issue which I feel is not a best practice. You can comment on that. The issue is bugs. So, in product based companies, we own the bugs. So, in Philips, when I was working, I did not face this issue because whatever efforts we put on the bugs, that was also added to our velocity. But here, the situation is our client says bugs are your mistakes, so we don't take them into the velocity. We don't consider them as the story points added in the current sprint. So why is that? I mean, is that a correct understanding or what is it?
See, I no, we don't know. It all depends upon how that contract has been designed. So, see, what
Okay.
I see here is that the way contract is designed between a vendor and the client, when the
Mhm.
client is looking for, I have given you a requirement, and if anything goes wrong, you need to pay for it. I'm not going to pay for
Mhm.
it. Yeah. So there is
Mhm.
a possibility of it. Then there will be a loop. How long you have to pay for it? So the vendor
Of
will say,
course.
okay, bulk reported in the duration of the upcoming sprint, n plus sprint are part of our money. If anything comes plus n plus 2 is part of your money. Yeah. So
Exactly.
all these things will emerge. Yeah. There is no right
Okay.
and wrong about it. So the situation
Mhm.
here is there will be, and then also it introduce the old issue, bug versus
Mhm.
enhancement, bug versus change request, so it's like a never ending conversation between software vendor and the software client, that it was
Okay.
implicit requirement. It was not a change, and the vendor will say, no, no, this was not there, it was a change, it's a change.
Okay.
So all
Mm-hmm.
those things will come up. Now if you are in that situation, indirectly, the external working agreement should define what is bug. Yeah, when
Yeah.
it is get classified bug, and what are the
Mm-hmm.
categories of bug. So you may, like, in the contract space, we worked on defining, something is not working on the UI, something gives a wrong result which was expected, not
Mm-hmm.
expected, so you define them. You define, and there is a classification of it. If it's it if the flow is still moving, but the customer is
Mm-hmm.
facing some inconvenience, so that's another type of bug. So you have a
Mm-hmm.
classification, and then you have a rules according to those classifications. That is it,
Mm-hmm.
like a type of bugs may fall under your company's expense, the type of bugs may follow under client's expense. So
Okay.
that's need to be clarified. Yeah, but from a development point of view, you have those work item, you have to put an effort on it, they will get fixing, you need to work on it, they will consume your sprint capacity. Now it's a
Mm-hmm.
separate matter who pays for it. Yeah, but ultimately there the work has to be done. So that's, as a scrum master, you can keep clear that, yes, we understand you may not want to pay for it, but ultimately it will consume capacity, it will not just go magically out. So I
Correct.
make it clear that capacity related to those defects is clearly visible. We can see how much capacity is getting consumed. That's a separate factor, that consumption of the thing may not get paid, or something else. Now if it doesn't get paid, you may face another challenge from your organization about why we have these bugs, how do we make sure the bugs are not there, and it can put into you another difficult loop for the quality verification and all. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's better. I mean, if we come to an agreement that what exactly are you putting as a bug, because what is happening is sometimes we are fighting. You
Yeah.
know, we say that this is an additional requirement. This should be added as a story, not a bug. So just to mitigate this fight, just to solve this problem, I should bring this agreement first. That what
Yes.
can we put it as a bug?
Yeah, and
Correct,
and
correct.
and and what I believe is this fight will never finish, even if you put a working
Yeah,
agreement. But put it at least,
yeah, yeah.
because when the contracts are designed like that, be it
Mm-hmm.
agile or be it waterfall, this
Mm-hmm.
discussion will continue. So what we best we
Mm-hmm.
can do is we make stakeholder collaborate. We show how well we are willing to help them. So increase
Mm-hmm.
collaboration, and at the same time make them understand. You also need to manage your company sponsors thing, and they also
Yeah,
need to
correct.
manage their contract. So create a collaboration, and on the top of
Mm-hmm.
that collaboration, bring this working agreement, or you can say
Mm-hmm.
working agreement helps you to achieve that collaboration. Because
Okay.
without collaboration, this debate is not going to finish, because it's very difficult to classify something bug or a change.
Yeah. So this is a classic example of a situation which actually demoralizes the team as well. I have noticed this a lot of
Yeah,
time
yeah.
because, yeah, in such situation, if we they say that this is something additional, but when I face the client, I have to take it from them that no, this has to go as a bug. So the team says, then why did we do the development, right? If they had to come like that, so this is demoralizing the team a lot. So I want to
Perfect.
work on this scenario a lot.
Yes, yes, yes. So work with these people, and
Hmm.
whenever there is a case. So for example, there is the thing which they are reporting as a bug, and you believe it is
Hmm.
not bug or it is bug, whatever it is. Your focus should
Hmm.
be, okay, whatever it is, how do we avoid
Hmm.
this happening again? What should we
Exactly.
do so that it doesn't happen again? My company paying,
Hmm.
you paying, but it's anyway wastage. Neither you
Hmm.
expected it to happen, nor we expected this to happen, but it is happening. So let's find
Hmm.
out what are the ways we can reduce such kind of misunderstanding, and that will go back to your
Hmm.
backlog refinement, that will go back to your external working agreements, that okay, whatever happened, we have these 10 bugs, how do I ensure that these 10s will not come in the next iteration?
Hmm.
So try to
Okay.
have that conversations with your
Hmm.
the stakeholders, and come up with a working agreement, because in the absence of that clarity, it will come again.
Hmm. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead with the next question, which is related to having sprint reviews. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm having internal sprint review with only my team, because this is something client is not asking for. Client just wants to see the complete deck in the sense all the features, their status, whatever is in progress, whatever getting spilled over. They don't want to see any demo. But okay, I don't consider demo to be an ideal situation here. But this is not actually a sprint review. This is actually a roasting meeting that we have, where a client will just want the status and then roast us. So I what my question here is, should there be a sprint review with client as well, or just the status meeting is what we think is the sprint review here?
Yeah. So see, what I'm sensing here is there is a good confusion, and I think for the sake of it, they are putting Scrum here, but they are
Yeah.
more or less having a fixed price, fixed requirement kind of an understanding, more or less, and that's why they are
Mm-hmm.
not worried about what is happening in between. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I am sensing that now we need to be clear in the working agreement part of it, and these all things are interrelated. Now, how it is interrelated? When I don't care about sprint review, I don't care about what you are doing in a sprint. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I don't care about what you are doing in a sprint, I don't have any goal of helping you to refine your backlog. Yeah. So
Exactly.
this whole thing is repetition, and then I don't care whatever sprint review you have done, but as per my criteria, if there is a bug, I will report it, and I may
Okay.
report it after 6 months.
Exactly.
So
Okay.
this whole thing is interrelated. Now, there is no use of sprint review if the client is not giving a feedback on it. So in a way, our bug report, our direction is the goal which you are doing in the form of a sprint review. Now, there could be a different goal. I don't know if that is the case in your case, where someone says, we have a fixed 100 requirements. This is fixed. Yeah, and the sprint review is basically to show internally that is it really progressing, but not to
Mm-hmm.
take a feedback. So if you do a sprint review inside, it's just a progress review. It is not a
Mm-hmm.
feedback. It is not a validation of are you making the right thing, and it won't help you to fix your path going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody will care about what you are doing in the next sprint, because from their side they have already given you the requirement.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So figure that out. Yeah, if you see that
Mm-hmm.
it's a waterfallish understanding, then you may need to
Mm-hmm.
bring some waterfallish way of managing the project work as well. Because if they are
Okay.
not looking at a sprint review, then you better have a proper change management process. Then you need to have a better documentation on the requirement. Because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have a sign off on the requirement. For example, they are not coming to a
Mm-hmm.
sprint review. Also, they don't care. And after 6 months, they will see something and say, "This is never intended. Our initial requirement was this," and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have any evidence in between because you were following
Correct.
Scrum. So now
Mm-hmm.
you are in a problem. Like you are not in a Scrum and you are not in a waterfall also. So if they
Exactly.
are following waterfallish process, then better you also
Mm-hmm.
bring waterfallish process to protect your companies and your team's interest. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we need to
Okay.
match their frequency,
Mm-hmm.
not to just create a legal case around it, to ensure collaboration
Mm-hmm.
and have a common understanding, common expectation management. Yeah.
Correct, correct. So this, a strategy to manage such situation where we are not even Scrum, not even waterfall, kind of in middle of that. I'll try to, come up with such strategies here.
Yeah. And one of the from the based on what I see in the industry and what I have done is, you may focus on
Mm-hmm.
milestone reviews. Yeah, may. Yeah. So you may realize that this is not going to be a Scrum initiative. This is not going to be a
Mm-hmm.
waterfallish initiative, because waterfallish looks too dangerous to you. Like after 1 year, you
Mm-hmm.
coming back and telling this is the right thing or wrong thing, you may be worried about it. Then you may have a little milestone strategy. You can say, okay, not every
Mm-hmm.
sprint, but every 1.5 month, 1 month, we have to achieve this much, and this is a release scope, and we need to put the release there.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
could be a one way of mitigating some. It's not an ideal thing, but it could be a one way of
Mm-hmm.
handling. And then for that release, you can have a kind of defined scope. You can have a
Okay.
defined understanding, and you can have a kind of a sign-offs also that those release bugs will not be reported after some point in time. So you keep closing incrementally. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. To some extent, I agree. But so I agree with you. Ideally, there is no such way that okay, go like this and this will be done. I have to find out the common frequency here and have that
Yes.
coordination properly. Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll
Yes.
work on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other than that, as I started from first, PO being inactive, uh, client side PO being inactive. So what is happening is every sprint when I do the sprint planning, when I start freezing the board. So I have started, getting into this practice that I freeze the board. I ask everyone that after today, I don't want any other tasks added, so that we are trying to get into the practice properly. But what happens is I ask that the client side PO just have a look at the acceptance criteria and give me a sign off whether you are fine with those or not, because in the end you cannot come to me and say that this is not what we expected. But I am not getting that sign off from the PO. I write an email. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So what I feel is, again, it's a interrelated stuff. So the
Mm-hmm.
idea here is, looks like that the sprint is only you guys worried about. Your client is not
Yeah.
worried about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't see any use of giving these requirements and sign off. Yeah. They
Mm-hmm.
might have got a contract by giving some vague requirement initially, and your company might have committed that we will do in this much money. So
Mm-hmm.
that could be their starting point. I don't know, because the contract between your company and that also defines their behavior. So
Correct.
it go back to the frequency matching only. So looks like that you
Mm-hmm.
want him to iteratively provide you details and all, and he might say, "Oh, this is not my job." Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
even if it's my job, it's not on priority for this week. I will do it some point in time. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to have that clarity, and see,
Mm-hmm.
it might be from the client perspective, you might be expecting your team to do all this. He may say,
Okay.
I'm not expected to do all this. We have just given you the requirement. You are the one who have to figure it out. Why are you coming to us? And later on, when the situation will become bigger, then it might get concluded that your team was expected to do all this, not them.
Mm-hmm.
So go back to the external working agreement overall,
Mm-hmm.
and the external working agreement should have the match of the frequency, the match of review, the match of classification. Many times these external working agreement are well defined in the contract. Yeah,
Okay.
so you may want to have that access to a contract, or you may want to people who might have an access to those contract and see what was the original understanding when these two companies contracted. Yeah, and
Okay.
then if something is missing, then you may come to the second stage and says, okay, maybe we need to have a proper working agreement between two companies or a two groups, so that we can execute and manage it, rather than we are just going in a way. So you can say it's a development methodology agreement, it's a development approach agreement. So in a way you can say,
Mm-hmm.
looks like we are working, but let's have a formal structured approach agreement, how the development will be carried out. What are the
Mm-hmm.
points where both of us will meet? What are the way we will give a feedback? What falls under whose criteria? What are the SLAs? If we give you a story, what is an SLA? Will it take 10 days, 20 days, or maximum 1 month before you tell us, is it okay as per your expectation or not? So you also have an agreement on those SLAs. So that kind of stuff
Okay.
will come. Yeah, see, the basic Scrum will, I think there was a little glitch. So basic Scrum will not tell you about all these things handling, because that is designed as if everything is co-located, or in, even if not co-located, at least on the same management structure. They have a similar
Mm-hmm.
goal. But here you have a
Mm-hmm.
kind of a two management structures.
Okay.
There are differences. Yeah,
Correct. Correct.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. A lot of work has to be done on that base.
Yeah. So if I
Uh,
summarize this, yeah, till
mm-hmm.
now conversation, it is all about having a working agreement, matching the
Mm-hmm.
frequency, and plus
Mm-hmm.
team internally looking for how well we can handle it. so that even if we
Exactly.
get less support, even if we get less information, but how well we can understand the requirement, the technology, and we can still navigate to it, and how do we reduce dependencies on external inputs. So there are two
Okay.
dimensional thing. So you are trying to stabilize the working agreement with external parties. At the same time, you are also influencing team to look options and look beyond what they are doing right now, so that they can build some capacities, so their dependency on external inputs reduces over a period of time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. Uh, Out of all these questions, I think, I mean, all of my questions were with respect to how do I deal with client. Only one question, the last question that I have is my internal team capacity based. So, I mean, what I understand with respect to addition of story point estimation is that we estimate it at the story points, but that is not always very, 100% predictable. you know there are always changes in the mid. We realize that this could have taken more time. In that case, ideally what I do is I ask team not to touch the story point, but add tasks. Okay, and let us track with respect to the added tasks whatever has been additional. Is that the right way? I just wanted a
that's
confirmation on that.
that's an expected way. So now what is
Yeah.
the and why? Let's explore why
Mhm.
rather than it's a right or wrong. So the idea here
Mhm.
is we are doing story point based estimation by looking at a product backlog. We are
Okay.
comparing it one over the other and all those things, and that remains the reference. Yeah. So you did the story point estimation. Now when you are going into your sprint, you may find something uh, uh, need to be added and all those things. You keep doing it, you don't disturb,
Mhm.
because see, out of 50 items which were there in a product backlog,
Mhm.
you might have only taken 5. There
Mhm.
are still 45 items which might have some estimation, but you are not
Yeah.
working on them. Yeah. So now you look at
Mhm.
a 5 and you saw a particular story point took more time, and you change that
Mhm.
story point. Now, when you are changing that
Mhm.
story point, you are only changing these 5. You are not changing the remaining 45. So remaining
Exactly.
45 were there in the affinity, and they are becoming little disturbed. It may looks like, for
Mhm.
example, you pick up a one pointer. You thought one pointer
Mhm.
will take one day. It took 3 days, so you made it 3. Yeah. But there
Mhm.
are other 45 items where there are other one pointers, and they may also
Mhm.
take 3 days, but now they are still one pointer. They are just lying
Mhm.
there. So what is expected?
Exactly.
We don't do that. We add the thing, and we may manage a conversion. We may have a visibility that, okay, what is our
Mhm.
size versus effort ratio? Yeah, for example.
Correct.
So you can
Mhm.
handle that, and that will help you to have a predictability. So that's the whole
Okay.
idea, which I agree what you are doing. Now, having said that, in your case, you may need to check your stakeholders as well, because see,
Okay.
if your contract is based on points,
Mhm.
you may have a different game there. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, so
Yeah.
because sometimes the vendor has a contract. Oh, whatever happens, we need to do a 60-point work.
Okay.
Now that itself brings a dysfunction, because whatever happens is called 60 points. It doesn't mean that it
Correct.
was 60 point, 50 point, 70 point, but whatever happens, it
Mhm.
get called 60 points. So please be aware, because you are coming from a product environment where everything was internal, and
Mhm.
here you have client versus vendor relationship. So your approach is
Mhm.
right, but you need to see the contextual element here, and maybe some financials impacted and other things. Then you need to follow
Mhm.
what is expected as per the contract. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Sakit, I got a lot of clarities. I will, I have a lot of work items now to work on from my side, and I hope I will be able to bring all these progress into the team.
Good, 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 good. Nice talking to you. Let
Yeah.
me know if you need something further. We may schedule some similar conversation later.
Sure, Sakit. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Bye. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Bye.